Is it fair to say, Coach, that you saw a diamond in the rough when you saw Darren Woodson in the draft and said, I want this guy on my football team?
Listen, it wasn't even a rough. It only took me about 2 minutes after he ran the 40 that I knew that he was a guy that we wanted for sure.
Let's say hello, Darren Woodson. Welcome in. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing outstanding. It's a pleasure to have you on, and I know Coach is going to run the show because he's going to get good stories out of you. But I met you at the Super Bowl.
Hey, look, I got to say this before we even get started. It's so crazy to hear Coach Campo call me up and talk to me like an adult, because for so long he was either screaming at me, cussing me out, or something. And so it's actually like I actually feel like I grew up. Like I'm a grown man now.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's so funny when we have these relationships. Like Big Cersei, Leon Cersei just left, and when Jimmy jumped on the show, you could see him all of a sudden sit up straight. So let's set aside the other stuff and just start off with how cool was it, Coach Camps being there, your development, because pick up right where you left off right there.
Well, he meant, look, Coach Campo made such an impact in my life. So, I got drafted. He was the reason why I got drafted. He went and ran me and did my pro day at Arizona State and put his neck out on the line for me. So I knew that coming in. I knew that Jimmy was going to definitely hold him to the fire upon my success with the team. I think the one thing that probably never went unnoticed, I know everyone watched, was the process of how he molded me into the safety and the player that I was. And it wasn't just the position, because I was a tweener. I played linebacker in college, didn't have any experience of being on the back end of the defense. And he not only did he have to teach me the safety position and the verbiage and, where to be on the football field, but he also taught me how to cover, like play man-to-man. And that was something that a lot of people lost on my first year. I didn't start at safety. I was covering the tight end or sometimes the slot receiver and whatnot. And it was through a short period of time. This wasn't like it was 2 years to get there. It was, training camp. They had me out there covering Michael Irvin, which I've still, blame Campo for, but had me out there covering the wide receivers and getting beat and then having some wins and building my confidence. So it made me the player that I was for those 13 years of my career, because I could be more flexible and do the little things and play man-to-man, play the zone, and to my advantage. It just made me a better football player.
Darren, let me say this to you. I know you love me and I love you, but you can thank Jimmy Johnson for you starting the second year, because I didn't want to start you in the second year either. And he said, Darren Woodson's going to start. And I said, hey, he's young. And Jimmy said he's going to start. And I said, Jimmy, that's exactly what I was going to say. He's going to start. and the rest is history, let me tell you. But it was very easy, because the two things that I loved about you from the very beginning, other than your athletic ability, was number one, you were smart, and number two, you were really competitive. So those things stick out right away. Let me ask you a question about the Cowboys real quick. I know you've been in Dallas for a long time, and this is something that people I don't know realize, but since our Super Bowl in Super Bowl 30, they have not been back to the Super Bowl, and they've really only won a couple of playoff games since. So they seem to have stinkers every year. Is it because they read their press clippings? What is it about the Cowboys that kind of has kept them from really finishing off?
Look, I think, and that's a good question, Coach. And everybody, I wish I had the full answer there, but I would say this. For years, this team was strong offensively, and I think we've been enamored by the talent that they've had on offense. And this goes back to the Tony Romos and the Terrell Owens days when they were loaded on the offensive side of the ball. Great running game. Had Marion Barber in the backfield, had a really strong offensive line, but then defensively they always had their weaknesses. They weren't strong enough on the defensive side of the ball. I think what we've always got enamored with the Cowboys were the star power and how, nationally we drive the star power. The Cowboys organization drives that star power, and everybody gets involved, and they're like, oh, my God, they're the best talent in the league. I don't think that they've I think they've been extremely talented individually on the offensive side of the ball, but it hasn't been until this year where I can say defensively, specifically in the secondary, at the linebacker position, maybe not so much on the interior side, but this team defensively has guys. They have guys that can stop. They have guys that can pressure the quarterback. They have guys that can make plays on the ball. And that is something that's been different within this organization this year. But in the years past, I think we put this team on a pedestal because we've always saw the star power, but they just couldn't get the job done on both sides of the ball. They were always leaning heavily on that offense to put points on the ball, up on the board, which we all know in the end, when it comes down to it, and I know everybody's going to be their naysayers out there, but in the end, you have to get stops in this league. And your defense is going to have to step up at some point in the league, in the playoffs, to get those stops on the road or even at home, but you're going to have to get those stops. And I think now they finally have those guys defensively.
Dallas Cowboys legend, a former pupil of Coach Campo's, Darren Woodson, joining us on the Fair and Fair phone line. So, Darren, let's dive into this week's big game between the Jaguars and the Cowboys. I'm looking at the series history right now. You are 2-1 all time against the Big Cats, at least according to what I can pair from your career records versus the series all-time results. I'm curious, when you hear Jacksonville Jaguars, broad 30,000-foot picture, what do you think when you think of the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Well, it starts at the quarterback position, and that's, you know, when you hear about Trevor Lawrence and the things and his growth and watching him play over the last, you know, look, first year he came in, it was hard to watch. It really was. Knew that he was a tremendous talent, but just didn't see that talent pop. Now you're starting to see that talent pop, and you're hearing it within. I office here at the Star in Frisco, the headquarters of the Dallas Cowboys. I have a real estate firm that overlooks the practice field. And I'm around these players a lot. And the guy that they're talking about is the quarterback and how he's grown up and growing up into himself and the weapons. You know, you got Marvin Jones, you got Zay Jones, you got a running game that's getting going a little bit, and you can't overlook the fact that, you know, if the running game gets going with Etienne and JaMychal Hasty, if that gets going, you got some problems. But again, it starts with Trevor Lawrence, and I think that's where the Cowboys are saying, "Hey, look, we got to get pressure. We have to understand that they're going to get make some plays down the field, but if we can continue to apply pressure, we can take him off his spot."
Darren, what's your thoughts on Diggs? What do you think about him as a DB?
I think he's a damn good defensive back. I think he's one of those guys, probably one of the best going after the ball, attacking the football and making big plays on the ball. That when he has his, you know, there's only a few guys that I've played with or seen play that when they attack the ball and they get the ball in their hand, they can do something with it. You know, he'll hurt you in a lot of ways. If you attack him, you may get some plays on him. Sometimes you get a lot of big plays. I think he's taken away some of the big plays that he was giving up, you know, last year. He doesn't have as many interceptions because he's not guessing as much. He's playing more sticky than he played last year. But when you throw the ball at him, the risk is he's going to take it the other way. And there was a guy that I played with that would dare you to throw it out there. He was number 21, named Deion Sanders. And when he touched the ball and you threw it at him, he was going to take it for a pick six. And I think that's some of the fear that you have with Diggs. He's a former wide receiver. He'll go up and get it. And then he'll try to take it to the house. He doesn't have the fear of running out of bounds. He'll try to take it to the house.
So, Dan, we talk about this all the time here, and I want to get your thoughts on it, specifically for this game. This game has really come down to getting the quarterback and protecting the quarterback. And you see both sides of this team. Like we've been talking all week. How is this Jags line going to stop the Cowboys' pass rush? And then on the other side, how do they get to Dak Prescott? And that's two huge issues in this game.
Yeah, it is. And I think if you're the Jags, you got to get the running game going. You have to establish one. And I think that's one of the Cowboys' weakness is the interior of that defensive line. If you can get the Cowboys in those second and threes and third and twos, you got a chance. And you saw the Houston Texans just did it last week. They kept the Cowboys' defense off balance by running the football. They got them in third and twos, and they were able to convert on those short yardages, whether it be pass or a running game or whatnot. What you can't do against this Cowboys defense is getting second and 12 or third and long, because they'll unleash the dogs, and they have great great pass rushers on the outside that allows them to make big plays. So if you get in those situations, now you're back against the wall. They're going to get after you. So running the ball, if you're Jacksonville, getting it in 3rd and 2, easily convertible downs. I would say on the opposite side, look, the one thing we've been watching with this Cowboys offense is they've had their struggles in the first half of a lot of games this year. And I think that all falls on Dak Prescott. He's been a slow starter in the first half of games. And if he can get going early on, I've been a firm believer that this team is kind of front-runnerish. If they can get up on you, they'll roll you.
Right.
If they get up on you early, they will roll you. If they get you down by 13, 14 points, it's a long day. You can forget it. Yeah. But if you're a team that's going to hit them back in the mouth, keep them off balance a little bit, run the football on them, it's going to make it for a tough game for them.
I think that's what Duval's hoping for. All right, Darren, before you go, we see a smile on Coach Campo every time he comes in the building. We're talking about a happy cat right now. But
who was that?
Yeah, exactly. No. So just how mad have you seen Coach Campo before we have to go?
Okay, so the year before I got here, they had a game in Chicago, and this tells you who Coach Campo was back then. Okay, he's 5'7" at best, at best, and he is like the fire plug. But he'll come and he'll cuss you. Again, this is the guy I know. He'll fight you. This is that Connecticut kid that will fight you. Like he will put his hands on you and want to fight. So they're in Chicago, and I get this story comes from James Washington, who was another guy that Coach Campo loved dearly. But they were in Chicago, and evidently they gave up a big play. Coach, you probably remember this. And it's freezing. Like, it is freezing cold. They all got these big jackets on. And back then they used to have these fire heaters off to the side. They had these Camp, you remember this?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay.
Keep going.
So they had these fire heaters, and this is how I'm getting introduced to the players are telling me who Coach Campo is. So they're arguing. The players just gave up a big play, and they're huddled up, and they're trying to talk things out. And Campo jumps in the middle of the huddle. He's yelling at them, screaming at them. And I'm telling you, no one can scream like Dave Campo. I've never met anybody. So he jumps in the huddle, and he's screaming at them, and they're trying to get him out of the huddle, and it's getting physical, and he's standing his ground. And they finally push him out of the huddle. Well, they push him towards this heater, and his jacket catches on fire.
Oh, my gosh.
And they're telling me this story, and I was like, I wish I was there. I wouldn't have put him out. I would let him burn.
That is hilarious. Listen, I know that we need to extend this conversation, but really great that you were able to do it. Hopefully we can do it
Darren,
again.
Thank you so much for coming on. And, you may be the best interview we've ever had here because everything I was going to ask you answered before I could ask the question. So thanks a lot. Really appreciate it and love you, man. You know that.
Man, love you, Coach. I really appreciate you, man. You guys have a good one.